Hi, welcome to the Raisina Ideas Pod 2024. Today we are going to be discussing, is the Arctic the next global highway? I think Arctic has been in the news for a number of different reasons, primarily driven by the climate change developments. But there is also the growing economic activities, including shipping, mining, and such other activities. But Arctic is also becoming sort of gaining greater traction because of the great power competition that we are seeing today. Great power competition, in fact, is spreading to new areas, outer space, Arctic. These are areas that was kind of immune to geopolitics in some sense, the great power competition. But we are seeing this competition play out in the Arctic today. With this competition, we are also seeing some new partnerships emerging in this particular area. And we need to see how that partnership emerges. Where does that take us in a sense? To discuss all of these issues, we have two terrific scholars joining us. Professor Alexander Sergunin, Professor of International Relations at St. Petersburg State University and Higher School of Economics, Russia. And our second speaker is Valery Konishev, Professor at St. Petersburg State University, again, Russia. Thank you both for joining us. So let me start off with Alexander, if I can. How is the climate change and infrastructure investment altering the physical and economic landscape of the Arctic? What does development of the northern route mean for the countries of the Indo-Pacific, including for India? If you can start relating some of these developments in the recent context, how do you see that panning out in the Arctic?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. As you might know, climate change in the Arctic opens up both a lot of new opportunities and also a lot of challenges. Among the opportunities, we can see the development of new maritime and air routes, including the Northern Sea route and also cross-polar flights. It's quite promising direction of communication between Asia and North America via the Russian territory. But of course, a lot of interest is going to the Northern Sea route development, especially with the perspective for use it for Indo-Pacific nations. And here we have a lot of stereotypes or even myths concerning this route, because on the Russian side, some pseudo-experts, they believe that the Northern Sea route can replace or at least be a competitor to the Suez Channel or other southern routes, which is not true. Because Northern Sea route is a seasonal route, seaway, and it cannot be used all year round. Although Russia promises this year to organize all year round shipment of cargo via the Northern Sea route, but it mainly goes to the liquefied natural gas, LNG. But of course, it's impossible to ship everything via the Northern Sea route in the winter time. Actually, the season which is more or less favorable for shipping is only 4 months, something like that, at most. Maybe in the distant future, it will be maybe half a year. Again, when we are talking about the climate change, there's another stereotype about Northern Sea route that, let's say, in 20 or 30 years, depending on the school of thought among the climatologists, among the natural scientists, that the whole Northern Sea route water area will be open, will be free of ice. But it's also not true, because even given this long-term perspective, if ice will be melting, but more likely it will be fragmented. And a lot of different obstacles, like small iceberg or fragments of ice, will emerge along the Northern Sea route, which is even worse than the ice itself, because ice can be broken by the icebreakers, and the icebreakers can provide a safe way for the commercial ships which are not ice strengthened. But icebergs and these ice fragments, they can jeopardize the vessels which are not ice protected or ice strengthened. So actually, there are paradox that climate change and warming in the Arctic may cause much more problems for the Arctic shipping than opportunities. And to finalize this question, the discussion about Northern Sea Route, I would say that it depends which nation we are talking about. Certainly, for example, for nations such as South Korea or Japan, or northern part of China, Northern Sea Route is very promising. It's decisive in terms of shipping LNG from Yamal Peninsula or other Russian areas. It's also quite probably could become a transit way from East Asia to Nordic Europe and vice versa, or between different Russian regions and East Asia. But of course, for India, for example, or Southeast Asia, the promise of the Northern Sea Route is not that obvious. Because, for example, India can get LNG cheaper and in a shorter time from, let's say, Qatar than from Yamal Peninsula.
Right.
So, what currently India gets from Russia, like oil, like coal, like diamonds, some other natural resources, they mostly come via the so-called North-South corridor.
Okay.
Which goes via the Caspian Sea region, or via Eastern Siberia, southern part of Eastern Siberia to Vladivostok, not the Arctic zone of the Russian Federation.
Okay.
So the Russian Far East, the Russian inner regions of Russia, they are much more promising in terms of Indo-Russian cooperation rather than the Russian Arctic. Okay. So still, the Arctic is far away from India, and of course it's quite problematic.
So it's problematic even for other countries in the Southeast Asian region.
Yes,
and of course
yes,
India
yes.
in a sense. Absolutely.
As I mentioned, northern part of China, South Korea, Japan. Certainly, it's a very good option.
Okay.
It could be some kind of not replacement, but some kind of complementary, supplementary
That's right.
opportunity for these nations.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the context of the great power competition that we also kind of talked about, and or at least in the beginning I touched upon it, how does the multilateralism work in the case of the Arctic? Has the Arctic Council been successful in shaping coordination and interaction even during this time of essentially intense geopolitical competition? So what's the success of the multilateral process? How successful is the Arctic Council in shaping some of the way we conduct ourselves in a sense?
Yeah. Actually, the Arctic was sort of a success story in terms of development of a proper, adequate institutional framework, and in terms of development of international cooperation in this region. Prior to the second phase of the Ukrainian crisis, which started in 2022, even after the reintegration of Crimea to Russia in 2014, the Arctic cooperation was developing in a very dynamic way, and the Arctic Council and other multilateral institutions, they worked pretty good. But unfortunately, after the start of the second phase of Ukrainian conflict, 7 Western Arctic states, they decided to link the Arctic region to the Ukrainian conflict. Which is, I think it's a quite artificial thing, because the situation in the Arctic is completely different from what is going on in the southeast part of Europe, or even from, let's say, in the Central Europe or the Baltic Sea region. Sure. So Russia is big, and it has different regional interests and pursues different regional policies. So the Arctic was always a very peaceful, cooperative region. Even in the Cold War era, there was a cooperation between American and Soviet
Right.
scholars, or European and Soviet scholars, mostly among the natural scientists, for obvious reasons. And now all these multilateral cooperative schemes were cut by the Western countries' initiative. It was not a Russian initiative. Russia was and is open for international cooperation in this area. And the Arctic Council, of course, was another success story. And it's famous for addressing not hard but soft security issues. And it was very successful in terms of issuing recommendations, for example, how to provide sustainable development in the region, how to take care of biodiversity in the region, what to do with preventing environmental degradation in the region, what to do in terms of maritime safety. Okay. And in this sense, the Arctic Council was crucial in terms of help, in terms of assistance of working out the Polar Code of the International Maritime Organization. Also, the Arctic Council was quite helpful in concluding a special agreement on banning commercial fishery in the central part of the Arctic Ocean, which is beyond the national jurisdiction. So the Arctic Council also assisted in concluding a very important cooperative agreement on the expansion of the Arctic scientific cooperation. So the Arctic Council did a lot. But what we have now is almost frozen. On only 7 Western Arctic states, they cooperated with each other in the framework of the Arctic Council. But Russia, which controls 40% of the Arctic territory, is out, or at least temporarily suspended. So the experts, they have 3 major scenarios for the future of the Arctic Council. 2 of them, they are very pessimistic. The first one is just the Arctic Council will be dead if Russia withdraw from it, sure, like Russia did in the case of the Barents Euro-Arctic Council last September. And then the Arctic will lack any regional institutional regime. The second option, which is also quite pessimistic, that if the Arctic Council is dead, dissolved, then each part, the Western countries and Russia, will try to create some new kind of institution, multilateral institution, and it will some kind of 2 blocks in the region, which is also not a very good scenario. I mean, because it's confrontational scenario. And then the third scenario is the so-called muddling through, okay, when the current situation will be kept until the end of the Ukrainian crisis, and maybe some kind of cooperation or involvement of Russia into the working groups within the Arctic Council, to resume some modest projects, okay, especially which are crucial, for example, for indigenous peoples, or maritime safety, sure, or climate change monitoring, that kind of thing. So I personally believe that the third scenario is realistic.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to hear. There is, at least you see some hope with the third possible path that you identify, in a sense.
Yeah, I would say the cautious optimism.
Sure, of course, absolutely, yeah. Let me come to you, Professor Valery. How do you think India and Russia can look at possible areas of cooperation? What are the areas that the 2 countries can explore in terms of opportunities for cooperation in the far north? What stakes does India have in the Arctic region? And some bit, Professor Alexander touched upon it, but yes, if you can specifically kind of talk about what are the different stakes and what are the possible opportunities that are there out there, in a sense?
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. First of all, I think that India doesn't see the Arctic as a top priority of its polar policy, in spite of Indian Arctic strategy was published in 2022. More attention is traditionally paid to Antarctic, and especially if you look at financial support. And maybe this is one of the reasons why India is not so active in Russian Arctic. And I want briefly to comment three main approaches of cooperation in the Arctic between India and Russia. They are science and technology, then transport, and then economy. Science and technology, I would start from scientific cooperation, because I think it might help India to better understand prospects for long-term cooperation with Russia in different spheres. When I say science, I mean not only science itself, but science diplomacy, when scientists and decision makers interact and helps each other to develop knowledge-based decisions on a state level. Obviously, the science diplomacy based on real scientific projects, and I want to attract your attention to some approaches for future Russian-Indian cooperation. First of all, it's a basic or fundamental research which have global significance, like climate change, permafrost, atmosphere, near space, Arctic Ocean, and so on. And one of the promising projects that can be initiated in the frameworks of BRICS is Arctic, Antarctic, and Himalayas. It aims to study relations between the three global poles. And Russian, in that sense, can offer additional option for India to explore relations between warming Arctic and monsoons, destabilizations that negatively impacts on Indian agriculture. Russian and Indian scientists can develop climate change models to predict dynamics of monsoons. And possible partners for India in Russia are the two leading organizations. It's Arctic and Antarctic Research Institute and Rosgidromet. Both have very rich experience and infrastructure in Russian zone of Arctic. And one more topic for scientific cooperation with Russia is a study of unpredictable threats from melting of ice and permafrost. Both Arctic and Tibet in India became the source of unknown bacteria and viruses, and nobody knows if humans and animals have immunity against them. One more fundamental problem is acidification of the world ocean that threaten to extinctions of many marine species. And such kind of research is based on permanent analysis of water samples from different points of the ocean, including Arctic Ocean. And as Alexandra said, Russia is about half of Arctic.
Yep.
Then development of applied technology. This is also very important both for India and Russia. For example, Russia installed hybrid power units in Kola Peninsula that uses energy from solar, from wind, and from diesel fuel in combination. Another interesting project is a floating nuclear plant, Mikhail Lomonosov. It provides energy for city Pevek, located in Chukotka. This is eastern part of Russian Arctic. And Russian scientists developed technology of compact nuclear plants that can be built during about 2 years in any remote region. And also Russia is one of the world leaders in green energy technologies. I mean primarily hydrogen. And Russia has necessary infrastructure, scientific infrastructure in the Arctic for year-round observation, joint land and sea expeditions, collecting data from sensors over all Arctic, and so on. For example, we have a new station, Snowflake, on Yamal Peninsula that can accept about 60 foreign scientists for research. And they can explore green energy technologies, astronomy, climate change, environment, near space, so on, so on. Another polar stations open for international cooperations. Ostrov Samylovsky, located in the delta of Lena River, unique in the world is floating ice-resistant platform, North Pole, for round-year research. We have scientific ship academic Molchanov that can be used both for research and educational problem. That means we have experience of floating universities when researchers give lectures to students from over the world and at the same conduct some research. And recently, state-owned company Arctic Ugal announced also plans to develop an international scientific station on Svalbard. And as I know, India accepted that, at least won't participate. So this is science. And once again, I think it's very important for India to understand their priority. What we have in transport and logistic, Alexander said about, so I will be very brief. India interest actually not in Arctic projects, but Far East projects like Sakhalin and Vladivostok, Chennai. And another, this is way from Murmansk, as Alexandra said, to Mumbai. But I think it's very interesting to think of the Northern Sea route because we see very unstable political situation in the Red Sea. So yes, it's right. Very important alternative. And second point, maybe for India, it's a way to balance China for you on strategical level. So in economy, yes, India is interested to buy Russian oil, gas, rare metals. Right. It's very interesting topic because we have new deposits and high quality coal and LNG. But India's participation in our economy in High North is quite modest. Yeah. India showed interest to few projects, Vostok Oil and Arctic LNG too, but there's still no real activity today. Okay. Now we have only one project. It's one core in Krasnoyarsk region. So it's India initiative mainly to figure out what she needs in Arctic, because it's not simple. But say again, maybe you should start from science to understand your position. And I know that Indian pharmacy company Sapharm plan to build plant in Murmansk. It's Russia very appreciate this. To produce some medical supplies. So, as I understand, now India just making first steps in this Arctic long way, I hope, and long cooperation with Russia. And I hope for that because we have good traditions in bilateral relations, and actually India have a very good position with Russia. Thank you.
In the science aspects that you talked about, have there been any discussions between the two sides already, whether like the green energy options or the nuclear options that you talked about? Have there been any discussions between India and Russia so far?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I want to offer you because
Sure.
I don't know about the
Okay.
discussions.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that Indian expert knows that.
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't think so. I think
So
that
it
the
is just
discussions are
agenda I offer
right.
to you.
Absolutely. Thank you. No, I think there's a lot to explore between India and Russia in terms of the Arctic cooperation. Thank you both for joining for this Raisina Idea Pods conversation. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.